Welcome back to the Corporate Finance Academy, and today we're going to talk about accounting versus finance and FP&A. So a quick look at what we're going to talk about. We are going to go through a high-level comparison of finance and accounting. We're going to talk about the roles and responsibilities between the two and how they differ, the subject matter you cover, talk a little bit about how you could be good at either one. Then we'll finish with what type of education and certifications do you need for accounting versus finance, and what types of jobs do you do in the two. Okay, so I want to start this off with saying it really depends. Finance and accounting, the definitions of what they do and what they are differ greatly based on where you work. And remember, we're talking here about corporate finance and corporate accounting. We're not talking about Big Four, public accounting. We're talking about working within a company in the finance function. So, finance, these are high-level descriptions. Generally, finance is going to be more forward-looking. They're looking at forecasting out the future, planning what's going to happen, setting budgets, evaluating potential decisions, and things like that. But there is a fair bit of analysis versus prior periods versus budget. But generally, you'll often hear finance is more forward-looking. But the reality is good finance people understand backward and forward. If you don't know what's happened in the past, you don't know how the business works, it's really hard to be successful at being forward-looking. Now, on the accounting side, you'll often hear that it's more backward-looking. So they're ensuring that everything that happened is processed, financials are accurately recorded, that we're following all the accounting rules and regulations, things are classified correctly. But again, a good accountant knows to look forward too. They're getting out ahead of potential issues. They're partnering with the finance team and the operating team to make sure they're preparing correctly for anything that's going to happen within the business. Roles and responsibilities. And again, I'm going to go back to the first slide we talked about where we say that it depends. Owners of these different tasks. So in some worlds, accounting may play a more proactive role in a budgeting process or a forecasting process. So again, take this for what it's worth. These are general roles and responsibilities. So let's get into it. Finance. One of the most common things you do within finance or FP&A is forecast the financials. So that may mean what is this quarter going to look like from a financial statement standpoint. And it may even be a further out forecast. Finance typically owns the strategy, planning, budgeting process. You'll often hear this called the annual operating plan, long-term planning, but this could also extend out 3 years, 5 years. Reporting and performance management. Now again, sometimes accounting might own reporting and finance might be more on the performance management side of it, making sure all the different areas within the business are performing, they're hitting their KPIs, they're hitting their metrics. Operational and commercial support. So you'll often see finance folks that are in a manufacturing business working in the shops or supporting different pieces of the business. And same on the commercial side. They support the sales team. They work on commercial deals, sometimes interface with customers or at least support the sales team who's working with the customer analysis and analytics. And again, this one can also bounce between accounting and finance depending on what you're looking at. But finance is tasked with analyzing results, finding opportunities, doing analytics to bring new knowledge and information to the business based on what the numbers say. Decision-making support. So should you buy this new piece of equipment? Should you invest in this new building? Should you do this new deal with a customer? Finance will often model those things out and help with that decision-making support. And really just partnering with the business. And it goes along with a number of the bullets in this. A good finance person is a good partner to the business, to the operating team, the commercial team, the marketing team, the human resources department, everyone. So moving on to accounting, what does accounting do? So accounting often owns closing the books. So this includes journal entries, making accruals, cutoff testing, preparing reports, and a number of other things. But closing the books, and this might be monthly, this might be quarterly or annually, depends on where you work. Account reconciliations, so doing those necessary control points of reconciling your accounts, reconciling your cash balances, all those sort of things. In a manufacturing business, they'll often own the fixed assets and the CapEx management. So they track the spend, they close out your construction in progress, they issue tags, they run depreciation, they do all the things associated with fixed assets. Overseeing accounts receivable, accounts payable, payroll, tax returns, tax payments, all those different things. It's not necessarily true that the accountant is the one doing all the minute details of these, but they're overseeing it. They might be helping to automate it or make it run more smoothly. Internal audits, so checking the different controls within the business, supporting the external audits if you work at a company that has external audits that are completed, researching accounting issues and assuring the business is complying with all those different accounting rules and regulations that are out there. And again, in a manufacturing business, they might be responsible for setting cost standards, doing inventory counts, all those elements that are associated with working in a manufacturing environment. As I said at the beginning, these are broad buckets. Not everything falls cleanly into one of these descriptions, finance and accounting. And in some companies, you'll actually see these jobs merged. So you'll see someone who's just called a finance person or an accountant, and they're doing both the budgeting, the forecasting. They're also closing the books, doing account reconciliations. In fact, early in my career, that's how it was for me. I wore many hats, and for folks who work in a shop or a small business, it's often very true that you'll wear hats under both of these areas. So subject matter, this is a little more theoretical, but I just wanted to talk about how accounting from a philosophical standpoint is really, in corporate accounting, is managerial accounting. It's maintenance of the company's books and records. Is everything stated correctly? Is everything compliant? What's our process like to get there? Are you eliminating manual processes, having air checks and controls in place to make sure things run smoothly, understanding the accounting theory, and even getting involved in things like tax and tax law? And then from the finance perspective, you're often blending together pieces of accounting, but also economics and business strategy, and you're taking those things and you're often modeling out what it means. Whether that's a model that shows you your forecast, your budget, whether or not you should purchase a piece of equipment. But finance is blending together a number of those different strategies. But to be good at either one of these, you have to work well with the other side. Again, sometimes you might do both. There might not be in your business a differentiation between finance and accounting. But if there is, you should talk to each other, work hand in hand. You should both know what the other is doing. You should know the accounting practice and how things happen. The accounting side should understand the forecast, the expectation, the budget, and they should work hand in hand. In addition, they should be working closely with the folks outside of finance and accounting. Again, whether that's human resources, the marketing team, the sales team, the operating team, the procurement team. And you should look forward and backward. As we said at the beginning, you'll hear the term the finance focuses forward, accounting backward, but I don't know that I buy into this. You really need to be adept at understanding both forward and backward if you want to be good at your job. Okay, so changing gears a little bit. What do you need in terms of education and certifications to work in finance or accounting? So in finance, typically you're going to have an undergraduate degree in finance, accounting, economics, or in some other business field. Though that's not a hard and fast rule, that's where the majority of folks are going to come through. And if you go look at our CFO video, you can see that where the most common sources of CFOs at big companies, where they come from their undergraduate degrees. Advanced degree, not required. It's fairly common that you'll see in the higher levels of finance folks with MBAs, but it's by no means a required designation. And trends, again, in our CFO video, you'll see that the trend is actually that the number of CFOs with MBAs are decreasing. Certification. In corporate finance, you will sometimes see CPAs. You will occasionally see somebody with a CFA designation, but there's not really a specific certification for corporate finance or FP&A. Now, there are some newer companies that are doing FP&A certificates. And we actually, on our website, if you go check it out, we have some courses that we're starting to offer, but there's not a widely accepted certification for finance or FP&A. On the accounting side, typically accounting is the undergraduate degree. especially if you're going to be a CPA, you're typically required to hold an accounting degree or have the requisite number of credit hours in accounting classes to sit for the CPA and to get that certification. But you will also see some folks with a dual degree. You might see an economics or a finance person who gets enough credits that they can sit for it. But most often you'll see an accounting degree. Advanced degrees, again, you can get a master's of accounting degree. There are schools that offer these 4+1 programs where you do your undergrad in 4 years. You do one more year, you get your master's, you get enough credits to sit for the CPA, and you get everything done in 5 years. Certifications, again, CPA is the most common, but there are some other certifications in audit. Some are in management accounting. I think the IMA has a certification, but CPA is the most common. Okay, so types of roles. What types of roles do you get in each? So we'll hit finance first. You'll sometimes hear finance and FP&A used interchangeably. You could get roles in FP&A that are more of like a consolidation or reporting. They're like headquarters, corporate jobs. Roll up the numbers, report, consolidate. You'll see some that are more cost focused, expense, SG&A, that type of thing. You'll see finance folks aligned specifically to sales or commercial finance. You'll see project roles, heavy operational industrial manufacturing jobs exist in those type of companies. There are COE, which stands for Center of Excellence, specific jobs where you might focus solely on procurement, CapEx, cash. P&L owner, where you actually own everything within a little division or segment of your business. And this could also include if you just work at a small business, you'll wear many hats. Then there are roles within Treasury, which deals with working with banks and cash. And then you, in bigger companies, will often have standalone investor relations jobs. On the accounting side, you typically start out as a staff accountant or a junior accountant. And again, we're talking about corporate accounting. We're not talking about public accounting. So your staff accounting jobs, you move through to accounting manager. And some of these are more specific where you work in a shop or you're manufacturing. You might have a technical controller job where you're dealing in a more complex business with making policy and assuring that everything's followed. You have operational controller roles, internal audit roles. Sometimes you have tax accountants depending on where you work. You could have roles specific to SEC reporting. And then at the top of the house, you have controller roles. These could be at a divisional level or a segment level or a business unit level, and chief accounting officer roles. But you can see from this that there are a number of different ways you can go in your career. There's a number of different roles, and you certainly can jump from finance to accounting or back and forth. Now, sometimes, depending on the role, it can be tougher to jump from finance to accounting just because of the technical knowledge needed and potentially a CPA requirement in some worlds. But you see a lot of people successfully transition from accounting to finance or FP&A. But there are a ton of options, and the world of finance and accounting is a big one with a ton of opportunity, and there can be some really great careers in these areas. So that's all we have for today. It can be difficult to understand sometimes the differences between finance and accounting, what the careers look like, what you need, what you do in the jobs. Hopefully this gives a little bit of clarity. But if you have questions, feel free to leave them below. Please subscribe, like the video, and like I said, if you have questions, leave them below and we'll try to get you answers.